when I was a sniper, we also got Mark 12s, Mark 11s, and stuff like that. And I used to carry it, and I just thought like there's so much to this because the ones that we had weren't perfect. And when I got back from my 2010 deployment, I started building what the industry could give me at that time that was like what I thought would be the perfect version of that. And then I saw Mod H and I was like, oh shit, somebody ought to figure this out, right? And so that was kind of my love affair with it, because it was still a carbine, like I could fight with it, but then it could do snipery things if I needed it to, right? And that's what I thought was awesome about the platform and its capability. So I think a couple of things have happened. One, we've been saying this for years, and there's a ton of podcasts that we've been on over the years that we've been like, hey, if you're interested in precision, because precision kind of started to pick up like 2013, 2014 as PRS got popular. And for the first time ever, the industry saw ROI on the precision side of the house. Because for years, I used to ask for stuff, and they'd be like, dude, there's 300 of you. You don't offer the ROI as a community for us to make things for you. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll go fuck myself. Right? But as that took off,
on this, but we'll definitely get into your background a little bit more. You should have told the juice story. That's funny. I mean, like, that's.
I don't know. Can you cancel a podcast?
Like, I mean, dude, there's podcasts that cover some pretty wild shit that we like. You would never believe that could get published. Now, YouTube's a whole different fucking story. YouTube, you can't even say like gun on anymore.
Yeah. Next thing you know, I'm like the Mel Gibson of the gun industry.
Well, they freaking canceled Kit Badger's channel.
Really?
Right before SHOT. They banned a whole bunch of people from YouTube. And then now, like the other day, I went back on and his channel was back up. Like, they turned it back on for him.
I was talking to a couple of guys. They had like they got like strikes on like weird shit. Like they put a can on or they put a mag in or something, and it was like that was like I don't know
where they draw the line.
Assembly. I mean, I think the line's drawn in pencil so they can keep erasing it. But it's definitely strange times we live in. Yeah, for sure.
To have something that's literally the second largest search engine in the world, to have that so restricted. Like, I mean, if you're building something or doing something and you run into a hard spot, where do you freaking go?
Yeah, YouTube University. We were talking about it this weekend, right? Yeah. Like, there's a bunch of guys like I'll start the class normally with like, hey man, what's your name? What's your level of experience with this thing that we're doing? What are your goals for the weekend? And inevitably somebody goes, well, I've read a lot of books and I've watched a lot of YouTube, which can be a blessing and a curse depending on which channels they found, right? But like we would just joke. I'm like, dude, you can learn how to build a space shuttle on YouTube if you fucking Google it enough, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to, like you said, it's the second largest search engine, which is owned by the largest search engine, right? So it's like, they're gonna ask, how do I do this? The YouTube thing's always been something of a conundrum from myself as an instructor, not because it's like giving away knowledge or anything, but like YouTube is, it's open source. Mm-hmm. So when you start putting stuff out there, it's not just the like-minded people we see at classes and the students that come and guys that pass background checks and stuff like that. It's, you don't know who it is, and it's not necessarily segregated even to this country, right? So there's a lot of guys that are putting out a lot of stuff, and I'm like, I know you're trying to make a name for yourself, but you're also putting out a lot of info here that, like, there's a reason like why SWAT teams don't wear body cameras, right? It's because so like they can't see it and learn the tactics and be able to prepare against it. And I see, unfortunately, a lot of guys, like startups in the industry, are trying to like put out so much information on these channels where they make it so open source. And not that it's not open source. Like, you can download the Army pub on CQB or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, there's maybe a little bit lost in translation between, finding that pub, reading that pub, understanding that pub or whatever, and having some guy explain it to you, CQB for dummies or shooting for dummies on YouTube, whatever the case may be. And you're like, man, like, maybe it's not that I want to restrict it in like that it should be restricted from citizens in any way, shape, or form, but like,
It is ITAR controlled.
It is,
You're not allowed to train foreign nationals,
Right. So it's one of those things you got to get. We have to get approval for that when we work with foreign units. Like, we got to get approvals, and for a reason. I mean, hilariously enough, like on the precision side, so like applied ballistics, which you can get. I mean, shit. Every one of us probably has on our phone, or your Kestrel or whatever. So technically, ITAR considers that software the same as like missile guidance software. So you're not allowed to teach like snipers from other countries like how to use it without ITAR approval, right, from the State Department and stuff like that. You got to use like there's another thing like Taxol, where it was originally the code was originally written in Chile for the software. It's the same fucking math. It's the same algorithm, right? But simply because its root was out of this country versus applied ballistics in this country allows, and honestly, I don't think most people pay attention to it anyway, but like we have units that show up and like they got to be ITAR to like come out of foreign national, look through like Gen 3 night vision, like they're issued panos, my brother, like like they've got panos and NGALs, and you're over here like, oh man, don't let them look through it. I'm like, you gave it to them, like, so it's one of those things we got to work a lot of times with the manufacturers on the side of that and be like, hey, can you add us to your ITAR for these guys so they can work and do whatever. So
cool. Do you want to do the roll in, or you want me to?
Oh, I can manage this one, I guess.
Okay.
We got a general subject, or we're just gonna kind of.
We're just going. I mean, like we already got 5 minutes talking about YouTube, man. I mean, that's
we're gonna use that.
We're going to use. I mean, that's it's going to be in there, and we're going to roll into it.
Actually, we're not even going to cut. We're not even going to edit this conversation out.
It's a good. No, like our last conversation with you and Jared. Thankfully you spoke more than Jared, so I mean it was a very popular podcast.
Hi, Jared.
I'll make sure we record that part and text it down. Right?
Yeah. But hey, we appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Thanks for having me. I was in town. Like I said, Chris was in class this weekend, so he was like, "Hey, you should stop by the shop." And obviously, I got I don't fly out till later in the day, so it worked out. I could swing by here and come see the operation for the first time and check stuff out. So it's cool. I always try to do that. Like, one of the things, I know this isn't like a retail shop, more of a distribution. We're in the back cave, so people know. Yeah. But I do the same thing kind of everywhere I go. I try to find local shops or the shops that support the community in that area. I know you guys have a nationwide presence, but you've got the BTO range right here, so you got the local presence too. But there's places in other parts of the country, like down in St. Augustine. You got Neil down at 2AF and stuff like that. And so any place that has like these little hubs or that kind of promote and support the community, whether it's hosting classes or putting out content or whatever, I always try to go down and support those businesses, right? So whether I like source my ammo from there, so I can fly in and pick the ammo up on the way in, or on the way out buy like a Glock mag or something, because can't have enough, right? So you roll in and try to make sure that you're supporting the things that are supported in the communities that for us as traveling instructors, we land in that community, and that that's who our customer base is. And so without those sort of local or regional hubs, those communities don't exist. And that's why there are pockets and communities around the country that are stronger than others. It comes from that, in my experience anyway.
But we appreciate you coming up, man. I know it was two hours in the different direction than, you flying out of IH or you flying out of Hobby? You flying out of George Bush?
George Bush.
Okay, cool. So it's not too bad.
At least it's a little bit over, a little bit past.
Somebody yesterday was like, "Where are you flying out of?" I was like, "Houston." They're like, "Which Houston?"
Yeah,
and I was
there's
like,
two.
So funny story. The last time we were here for symposium, when we were waiting, we had to kill a night in Houston to go back and pick up Jared's guns. So it was me, Jared, and Brokos. And so we're out, like we go to dinner and we're hanging out, and then we're like, okay, well we need to get we're gonna get a hotel. And Jared's like, "Oh, cool, I'll get us a hotel by the airport." Well, he got us a hotel next to the wrong airport. So we woke up in the morning. We're like, "We're right here." And Jared's like, we're not right here. So we had to drive over from wherever the fuck Hobby is over to IH and deal with the saga of getting Jared's guns. But it was pretty funny. We're like, oh, 2 airports, huh? Missed it by that much.
I just hear Jared's voice, guys. I fucked up.
Oh, it was funny. We were laughing, because it was the 3 of us, and then Stitch, in tow, and so it was just like, what do you mean there's 2 airports? But such is life. So
I learned when I first moved to this area real quick, if somebody's like, "Hey, can you give me a ride to the airport?" The first question is, which airport?
Which airport?
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, there's the good one, then there's the bad one.
Which one's which?
Bush is the good one.
Okay, all right.
I don't know. I'll fly out a hobby. Like, I don't give a shit. But, like, I haven't had beef there.
I've flown out a hobby in like probably a decade.
Yeah, I haven't had to do that in a long time. So.
I guess we can do the intro.
Yeah.
Chris like, yeah, let's go and do that.
Maybe.
Yeah, so welcome to the Big Text Ordnance Podcast. I'm Ike, joined by Chris, also Chris, and Alex from Ridgeline Defense. So thanks for coming on the show and swinging by and, yeah.
And you brought some really nice weather.
Yes, gorgeous weather.
So normally it doesn't go like that for us. So normally wherever we go, like I think two of my guys were down in Abilene last week for a TTPOA class, and they brought, our shitty New Hampshire winter weather down to them. So it like snowed in Abilene, and it's like cold and rainy. And they're like, bro, it's been nice before you guys got here. And we're like, yeah, it's pretty standard. So, but yeah, we couldn't ask for better weather for the class this weekend.
Yeah, mid-60s, light wind.
Yeah, it was perfect. So never get that lucky, but we did this weekend.
So for our listeners out there, if you will, give us a little bit of your background, what you did before Ridgeline, why you started Ridgeline. I know we didn't talk about that specific aspect last time, and we didn't really dive deep into your background. So if you will.
Yep. So I started off in the Marine Corps. Kind of grew up, where I'm from, kind of the Boston area. Like Marine Corps is like pretty much what everybody does. There's a good Army contingent too, but for some reason, like South Boston and Marines, or the South Shore Boston Marines, seem to go hand in hand, right? Actually, so like you guys, a lot of the, I'm sure there's Marines in the audience, but everybody knows like Marine Corps is big about their balls every year, right? And I'd never been to I think I went to one ball the whole time I was in the Marine Corps because we were either deployed or at a school or whatever. And so there's a Marine Corps association that runs this luncheon every year in Boston. My buddy's like, you got to come to this, luncheon. And I'm like, man, I really didn't even go to the ball when I was in the Corps. Like, I'm probably not going to go. He's like, dude, trust me, you got to go. And he's like, we're meeting at the Irish in Quincy at, 8 a.m. We're going to start drinking. I'm like, well, you had me at, we're meeting at the Irish at 8 a.m., right? So we go there and kind of we get on the party bus and we're hitting like every, like fraternal order of fire on the way in. We're hitting every, VFW, whatever. We end up, when I walk into the convention center and like, no shit, there's probably like 2,000 like current former Marines, like all, located, cocktail hours from like 11 to noon, right? So you can see where this is headed. And, but I come to find out, dude, like the commandant comes to speak. Like, I think the last time I went, like, General Dunford was like the keynote speaker. He just came off, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So it's pretty wild how big the draw is, right? So it's kind of regional to that area. So it's kind of unique. And then afterwards, everybody kind of descends down to Seaport in Boston and proceeds to attempt to drink it dry, which I think we've done on 2 occasions.
Oh yeah.
So it's a pretty wild event. So anyway, I started off in the Marine Corps. Actually started off kind of before that. I was going to college as I had a Marine Corps ROTC scholarship, and but like Iraq kicked off, and I was like, Afghanistan happened, Iraq started happening, and I was like, I was a child, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. All the wars that we'd had to that point were like 96 hours in length, right? So I was like, man, if I miss this, it's going to be kind of a fucking shame. So I left and enlisted, and that was kind of it, right? So I got there, I went in as a grunt and, started off in the line and then moved over to Snipes. And, I got super lucky when I went over to Snipes that we had just unbelievable platoon leadership at the time, both from experience, guys that had done, a bunch of the great early Iraq deployments, and then they had all done schoolhouse time as instructors, and then they came back and they were all of our team leaders and section leaders and stuff. And so the amount of like knowledge that they had from different places and having been instructors at different schoolhouses, whether that was called SOTG at the time, or the actual schoolhouse at Geiger, or over on the West Coast, and so they all kind of landed at ours, and those were my mentors from the jump. And so that's really kind of where I found. It's the first time, like I joke with people like Marines are really proud about being Marines. I don't really care about being a Marine at all, but being a sniper was like the best thing ever, right? I was just like, I got sent to school, and it was just like, for the first time ever, I was like, I have found like my full purpose in life, and that was it. So did a couple more deployments over there, ended up as chief scout, And so kind of like my job was to be the subject matter expert in sniper operations for the battalion, to advise, the battalion commander on sniper operations, as well as, obviously the gunner. And then to obviously design selection and training of the platoon to get it ready. And then normally how we work in the Marine Corps on the conventional side is we kick out a section, sort of each company, in direct support, and then we maintain a general support section that can kind of free roam the battle space. And usually as Chief Scout, you get that GS team. So that's kind of how it laid out for me for that last deployment there. I got back, so I saw the writing on the wall. I decided the Marine Corps was going to kind of, like, your roadmap career-wise as a sniper in the Marine Corps kind of ends at E5, unless you're one of the lucky few that kind of like somehow keep ratting your way back to a schoolhouse and then to a sniper platoon. But you're really at the mercy of the Marine Corps at that point. So if you don't kind of have a way to really kind of finite your path, And so I just looking at the writing on the wall and kind of how the war was going at the time. And this is 2013-ish, so it's starting to draw down pretty hard. I was like, yeah, dude, I want to get out and go to the Army. So kind of spent the last year kind of getting ready for that. In 2014, I crossed over while I was on terminal leave. It was kind of weird, but basically the business rules changed, and they were like, prior service E5 and above, like, we don't need you anymore. And I was like, okay. So I got to go home and tell the wife, who was pregnant at the time with our firstborn, that, like, I don't have a job or a career anymore. So that was it. So that's kind of how the training thing started by accident, right? I started going to school. I put in for some contract gigs. I was just waiting on clearances and stuff and visas and all the stuff you got to do for that. And that's something that everybody, while they're in, they think like, oh yeah, I'll just get in the contract. I'm like, dude, you have like 6 months to a year, like from the time you are, hired or, conditionally offered until you can actually be deployable. Like, you've got a ton of time, right? So, shooting was something that I kind of fell in love with, in the Marine Corps, obviously on the sniper side, but, at SOTG with a lot of pistol and carbine and everything else. And so kind of getting back to New England, there ain't a whole hell of a lot of it to do, right? So I ended up just kind of bumping into some dudes and starting shooting, and some guys asked me to come, hey, like, would you come, teach me guys and stuff like that, and I would. They're like, hey, man, you got a card? I was like, no. Like, you want my number? So after enough guys asked me for a card, I'm a slow learner. I don't know if you guys pick up on that, but enough guys asked for a card, I got cards made, and then enough guys asked, like, where's your website? I'm like, so I called my buddy who worked in tech. I was like, how do I make a website? And so he's like, whatever it was at the time. Some like make it yourself, like drag and drop bullshit. So that's where I started there. And then I kind of got in on the guard side into a unit over there and kind of stayed in it that way. But while I was waiting to go to selection, like contracting with training, and then I got picked up by some larger companies to teach for them, and all of a sudden the ball just started rolling, and it got to the point where we kind of hit climax, and then I got the opportunity to start Ridgeline, which was originally going to be kind of like a membership-based facility, if you will, was sort of the original business plan. And I kind of jumped at that as I saw it as a way. A lot of guys that contract will tell you, like, contracting's a great job, but it's not a very good career, right? And so looking to be able to build something that I could do for a while, I kind of chose to go and pursue that. And also it was weird. I was going to business school, or not MBA business school, but I was studying business in my undergrad. And it just kind of like made a lot of sense. So I decided to jump back into that. And it's funny that the university at the time had a veterans incubator for business plans, and they were like, hey, you should submit for this. I'm like, bro, I teach people to shoot guns. Like, there's not a business plan here. Like, come on. But once they had, I sort of had the idea to start the range and stuff, I was like, well, there is an actual business plan there. And so that's kind of how we went back. And with that incubator, I got a lot of assistance from professional service providers and people who taught me a lot more than I was ever going to learn in that school. And so I like to joke, to my partners, and I'm like, hey guys, thanks for this real world MBA you gave me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we started. And obviously we had some early hurdles, and people have heard about that and read about that. And like, I think even Recoil wrote an article about it, but we were able to pivot. And then in 2018, we were introduced to the guys over the Team O'Neill Rally School. And for people that don't know, like, Team O'Neill's been around, like, last year, 2022 is their 25th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
They've been providing tactical mobility training, loose surface train driving to the who's who of special operations and, other government stuff for 25 years. And they asked us, the general manager at the time, who is now the majority owner and CEO of the company, Chris Sear, he actually offered, he observed some of the training that we did for them or in with a relationship with them, and then he asked if we would come on board, and build out ranges on their facility to start sort of backstopping the tactical side of the tactical mobility program for other contracts. While we were kind of planning that, there was another piece of property directly adjacent that became available that was already a range.
Oh, wow.
It was a cowboy action range. So it has like the bank, the post office, the church, the barber shop, the, whatever, right? The saloon. So we were able to actually secure that property, take control of it January 1st, 2019, and like immediately went to work on kind of updating it to what we needed to be, to meet certain range criteria for contracts, right? So safety. So you guys know running the indoor range, right? There's really, it's weird. There's no like building code in a lot of places for ranges, but there's like best practices. It's kind of mind blowing. You talk to insurance and they're like, yeah, we'll insure you. I'm like, you didn't even see it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of places or ranges that I'll go to around the country, and I'm like, this is what they let you guys get away with, like I'm looking over the berm, like, man, there was one in another part in Texas we were at last year, and I'm like, you can see the tops of the heads of the shooters on the other side. I'm like, this is a problem, right? Somehow they got insurance, but so it's weird. So, but there are certain entities that publish range criteria, most notably like DOE and stuff like that. And so we built everything during that sort of renovation, if you will, to match what those criteria are, so we could be within parameters for safety for contract stuff. And 2020 hit with COVID, which is kind of a mixed blessing for us, right? Because obviously, like, nobody could go train. Like, DOD was like, everybody go home, timeout. Civilians couldn't come, for the most part. Ammo shortage was, insane. And then, like, nobody could stay in a hotel. And where we're only 6 miles away from like a kind of what is the biggest town in the North Country, New Hampshire. But, like, if you can't stay in a hotel, like, where are you going to stay, right? Or Airbnb, like, where are you going to stay? They hadn't figured that out yet early on. But it was kind of nice for us because we're like, well, I don't have to figure out scheduling. I can just bring all the machines in and go to work now. So 2020 was like a double-edged sword for us. And so we went ham for like 6 months in 2020 with machines. I was talking to Shockey about it yesterday. I'm like, things I never thought I'd know, what it costs to fill an excavator. And he's like, right? So we were commiserating, weirdos were like, oh yeah, man, did you see like the new like the auto grading like transom GPS guide? We're like, oh yeah, it's so cool. I'm like, in this conversation I never thought I'd have, right? So
you're going to Vegas twice a year for shot and then World of Concrete.
Yeah. We got lucky actually. So I sent one of my guys over there to the World of Concrete convention while we were there. So one of our guys, Matt Amel, just retired after running. He was staff in CYC for Sephardic over at Range 37 and kind of stood up their special purpose breaching course. And so he went over there, him and Blake, and started making friends, talking to some guys and getting some info on some stuff for breaching through the concrete. So we kind of made the most out of that trip. So, but yeah, so we've got, that's that kind of the part about Ridgeline that I talked about even in the intro is, it started off as kind of my idea, but very quickly, I mean, like literally within like the first week of like, started collecting this merry band of misfits, right? So guys with incredible backgrounds, incredible amounts of deployments, incredible amounts of experience and schools that they've all been to. And the unique part of how we've done stuff and how we've built our curriculum is it's not any one of us. It's like, like Ridgeline isn't just like my tax ID, like a lot of other guys in the industry where it's just one dude because they're kind of a one-man band. We have this huge pool. I mean, we've got, I think, like 7 full-time instructors right now, and they all come. And we have a list of part-time guys a mile long that we can call for, if we need to plus up on numbers for, a contract, or they have a particular special skill set, that we don't really maintain internal because it's not something we need to provide all the time. But we know who we can call to bring them in to that stuff. And so we have this incredible body of knowledge between everybody, and then we distill that down into the curriculum. So, like, it's not just how I learned it, not just how you learned it, not just how the school you went to learned. One of my mentors, Dave Harrington, he told me something very early on when he was mentoring me, was like, dude, when you start teaching, teach what you've learned, not what you've been taught. And that was like super powerful. And I was like, you're onto something there. And so as we've combined with all of these guys and their experiences and their schools and their deployments and everything and their good ideas and their way, most of us are all trying to solve that problem in some way, shape, or form. We could really just start to narrow down, into what was allowed us to be successful as end users, and how do we take all of that experience and figure out a way where we can hockey stick the learning curve to somebody that's coming into it. And so that's part of the Ridgeline thing that I really like, is because I get to learn so much from observing my guys, seeing my guys, new guys that come in, and vice versa. And it's just this melting pot of everybody's trying to be better at this skill set and be better at delivering it to the clients. So yeah, we started that. Like I said, 2019 we landed there in New Hampshire. In 2020 we went ham on trying to get stuff done before everybody opened back up and came back in. And then after 2020, it's just been kind of a rocket ship. I think people were pent up coming out of the pandemic a little bit, so wanting to shoot ammo again. So ammo was tight in 21.
Yeah.
And then 22, it kind of started to come back, and so people were like, they could get ammo, they did want to train, and so on our open enrollment side, that all of a sudden just took off. All of a sudden all of our classes are sold out. Just it's crazy. The law enforcement side, same deal. And then all the places we have been going around the country that we started before we even had our location, we just kept up those relationships with those hosts who are awesome and have always helped us out and believed in us when nobody even knew who we were. Not that a lot of people do yet. But they would help and continue to help and push and fill classes. So it's super cold back home right now. So I'm down here in Texas, right? So we got a great host down here. Two of the other guys were at Blakely, Georgia this weekend as well, teaching another scope carving course down there, down in Arena. So they were hosted down there. I think our next travel, we're out the door to Arizona, teach a full spectrum night vision course.
Oh, nice.
For Scottsdale PD is hosting it. They've locked on some awesome training venues for us. I think we got a whole mall or something that we did to go. Yeah, so it's pretty rad.
Nice.
So
wow.
yeah, it'll be, I think the last night is just full mission profile. So it's going to be pretty rad.
Cool.
So yeah, that's kind of the once around the world of where I started, how I got here, and how kind of Ridgeline sort of came to be.
How big's the shooting facilities at Ridgeline, and how big is the driving facilities?
So we are very much the kid brother, right? So our facility is roughly 130 acres. We're only developed, so we're in super mountainous terrain. We're right on the north edge of the White Mountains. We're about 20 miles as the crow flies from the summit of Mount Washington. So the driving facility is, I think, 583 acres. So combined, we're a little over 700 contiguous acres. But it's cool because we've got the terrain provides some unique shooting stuff for our long range side. So on our side of the street, as we kind of call it, there's a class 5 dirt road that runs through the street, that runs right through the two facilities. On our side of the street, we kind of have our more urban sniper based range. So it's 0 to 600. There's a tower. We have hundreds of steel targets, all various sizes laid out. We've got 5 moving target systems. We're partnered with a company out of Vermont called MVP Robotics. They make what is, I think, the best moving target system on the planet, called Hector. It's a robot. So if you guys, similar a marathon target, but think a marathon target that was made by Ivy League engineers. And it's crazy because they originally made it for Dartmouth football team to be a tackling dummy.
Oh.
So that they would stop getting CTEs. And then the NFL saw it. And then NSW out west saw the Rams with it, and we're like, can you make that with a target? And they're like, yeah, I don't see why not. So the agility and the speed that this thing has is otherworldly. It can run a 30-degree side slope with steel because of the auto gyro. I can set it up on a track and let it run for 8 hours, and it will run from the different waypoints. It can do different speeds, and then it will recock and run the route again, and you can run a bunch of them at the same time, and you can take manual control over them if you really want to make students' life hell. Then they've got multiple hit zones, so similar an action target, auto target, where you can see it's not just a hit. On an Ivan, they can be was that a center mass hit? Was that a fringe hit? Was that a pelvic hit? Was that a headshot? And it records all of your data. So for us as instructors, we can go back and look through all of it and figure out what was your time of engagement, where are you struggling in terms of speed of the mover, distance of the mover, angle of the mover, night, whatever. So it's a ton of stuff there. So we work with them. So that's all on our side.
That's insane.
Right. So it's pretty rad. So that's on our side of the street. And then across the street, the way the terrain lays out was we have basically 2 intersecting valleys, kind of a generally gentle valley that runs east-west, and then a much more severe alley that the southern skid pad is in. And that valley kind of creates a bowl. So it's got 2 mountains and then kind of a saddle on the south end. And so all of the weather that's running up from, south to north up the East Coast funnels through Franconia Notch and kind of lands in that valley from the south. And then it picks up wind coming off Washington doing its own thing. And then the jet stream, because we're far enough north to catch that coming out of southern Canada and the lakes, we got that coming west to east most days. And those collide in this terrain and kind of like fishbowl. And so at different levels and then on different days and at different distances, the winds are all doing different stuff. Left, right, updraft. So it's pretty gnarly for the long range side. So we've got out to 1,200 yards on those firing positions. And we do have a little over 2,000 meter shot as well that we can do over there. But the rally school maintains 6 miles of their own road. There's 2 skid pads. So I think both the skid pads and then our range one are all certified LZs and registered LZs with the Air Force. So we've got a lot of guys that fly in and out on that. And then the roads are all cool. So the guy who founded the rally school, Tim O'Neill, he was like the winningest American rally car driver of all time. I mean, that's where this school is where Ken Block and Travis Pastrana first learned to drive rally cars. Yeah. So, he's one of sort of the godfathers of American rally, or rally in America and American rally car drivers. And so when he built the school, and he literally built it like piece by piece by piece over 25 years, every part of the track is not just built to utilize the terrain, but it's built to illustrate a learning point. So like each corner, if you run it one way or run it the other way, it's all teaching different stuff and replicating different things, so you can take the technique that they're teaching and actually apply it in the scenario that they're being talked about, and then so you can start to understand how it works and all goes together. So it's a super unique facility. And that's kind of one of the parts for building Ridgeline was super beneficial for us, more so than I even knew at the time, was being able to observe how they had done things, hear the history and the lineage. And then so when it came to building the facility or building the curriculum or building the staff, I could literally look across the street for the model of how they did it in a way that's been super successful, where they have full-time staff. So it's not 1099 guys that don't totally understand the curriculum or the facility or whatever. It's not, it wasn't just, hey, we need roads, so they built roads, right? It was, everything was done with a purpose to be able to illustrate or make the point physically of what they were teaching in the classroom and in the car. And so having that as our, role model, if you will, was unbelievably helpful. So that's kind of the really unique part about both our operations and then also the two combined facilities. So like on the outward facing side or forward facing side to the clients, it's one seamless playground. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I think if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube after you get done listening to this whole episode, go and look at the driving school there, and you will go down a rabbit hole of videos and like, man, I've always wanted to do that. And it's definitely on my bucket list.
Dude, it's honestly, so we up north where we have, obviously we got snow and rain and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, my kids will go through that school the second they turn 14. Just as like the car control. It's not about racing. It's about being able to control the car, understanding what it's doing, and being able to do it safely, at speed. And you can take it as far as you want, obviously, like look at, Ken Block and Travis, like, but you can also just be like, well, now I know how to not crash in the rain, so there's both sides of it too. But yeah, they have a huge YouTube channel. Like they've got a ton of videos on there. It's like instructional. So they have a lot of fun with it, and there's a great group of guys over there too. So we got super, super lucky. People always ask, like, how'd you pick there? I'm like, they kind of picked us, and that's where they were. So yeah, that's kind of how it broke down.
That's fantastic. Looks really cool. Website's well done, and the YouTube channel is pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't do that website, so I remember I did the first one, the drag and drop. We're beyond that now.
We've graduated.
Yeah, we've graduated a little bit. So now I'm just kind of hey, can I get like this? And they're like, no. But it's the internet. We can probably do everything. But like, if you want to pay for it, we can do it. But yeah that's about the extent of that.
That's how it typically goes when it comes to web development. Would you say most of your stuff is contract at this point with that facility, or is you kind of what's it look like?
Yeah, I mean, we try to be, and that's another lesson that we learned from the rally school is never to be just completely dependent on one stream of revenue as far as client base goes. also, I mean, New England, one of the whole reasons I started the idea of Ridgeline when it was just going to be a range was because there wasn't any cool place to shoot up there, right? And so, it's kind of a shame to have this amazing infrastructure and then not let, be like, oh, we only teach, law enforcement military. Yeah. It's like, no, man, like this has been for us up there, and I'm going to put my Beast Coast regional hat on real quick, but like it's a super underappreciated and underserved area of the country when it comes to the firearms industry, which is hilarious because the firearms industry in this country primarily, they've all left at this point, but they start with the, like, there's like SIG and like Q and like Ruger, and like Wyndham, right? But there's, everybody else has jumped ship. I think Colt maintains some corporate offices in Connecticut or something like that. But like Smith & Wesson just rolled out of Mass, and they were kind of, I think, maybe one of the last hold-ons. I think Troy left. Like everybody's gone, right? But it's been a very like underserved, overlooked part of the country for this industry for a long time. And so I like to, be able to offer the classes at our facility to open enrollment. Otherwise it's just like, we're not being stewards of the community at that point. One of the things that I always have to look at from an industry side is we're not getting any more popular, right? Like we were just talking about the YouTube thing earlier, right? Like it seems like everybody is out to kill this industry in one way, shape, or form. And to be able to have a positive influence or impact on my local community with students who are like just maybe we don't get too many like beginners. I don't know if that's just people are scared or intimidated or whatever, but like normally we get the, kind of our newer students, kind of that intermediate level shooter and then to advanced. And so here's the opportunity to make sure that they have a really good feeling about guns and the industry and the hobby they've chosen, or like maybe they're just dabbling into it. Right. And, one of the things that I'll do too is there's classes or people that maybe aren't ready to jump in our classes. I have some guys locally that do like the more beginner entry level, like familiarization classes and stuff like that, who are great shooters. USPSA GMs and stuff like that, but they're chiefs of police or whatever. And they do these things on the side. And so I push them to guys that I know that are reputable to kind of get them ready to come and to be able to succeed in one of our classes. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just an opportunity for them or for us to build that next generation and hopefully have an input. We do things like we hosted a lady seat event, so we could get, just more women shooters into it. I'm under no aspiration. I think like it's going to become a women dominated industry. People talk about it all the time, but the reality is it's never going to happen. Right. But working with Appleseed, getting kids involved, we just did a thing for, there was a local theater company who wanted a firearm safety class because they're handling, prop guns. And they're like, I don't know what we don't know. We're like, they're locals. I'm like, yeah, man, come on up. We'll do a FAM for you. We'll walk you through how to use your stuff. And it's just being a good steward of the industry and the hobby to these people who maybe aren't as, I think sometimes we forget that we're not totally into it. He's out. And he's back. Good. That aren't as into it as we are. I think sometimes we forget about that. Yeah. So, we're able to offer that to them. So, but yeah, try to make it a third across the board. It is what it is. Some years are different. Some years are others.
And you've, 2020 was a wrap, right? So 2020 just really didn't happen for a lot of people, right? Like you talked about it. You spent that whole time building the infrastructure, right? Building the ranges. So
yeah, like you said, that
you're only 3-4 years old at this point. Right?
Yeah. I would say, we're probably, so the company is probably 6 or 7 years old, from the mobile side up through in like the first project. And then, I talk about, with us all the time, it's kind of like this is almost like year 3 for us, or technically like year 2. Cause like COVID was like, we started in 19, but like we were just starting, on building our stuff and whatever. 20 was a wash. 21 was all ammo shortage.
Yeah.
And so it was like, we're kind of like year 3 as far as like, how we really look at our facility and the business and stuff like that. And I think a lot of on the law enforcement military side, I think there was a lot of people played catch up, right? Because they were either stuck in deployment stacks or whatever the case may be. They had to kind of catch up through that. LE continues to be like, what we've seen, especially up by us, is either they weren't allowed to travel out of state because of COVID restrictions, however long those restrictions went, even after sort of it was over, so to speak. And now there's manpower issues. Like a lot of departments don't have enough bodies, like the small to medium-sized departments, they just don't have enough bodies to put back on the road, without covering down a huge overtime to send people anywhere because they're strapped for personnel as it is. So it's a very unique thing working with them. So on that end, so it all kind of comes down to, like I said, we try to maintain to the best of our ability, third, and a third, but it works out.
I don't want to hog the whole interview, but I got another question. Do you got anything?
No, go ahead.
Do you have anything?
These are good questions.
Well, I like watching some of your videos on your facility. How far are you guys able to stretch that out there now? Because I've watched like some of the videos you can see from like the shanty town, like down the ranges and stuff, and then you go up the side of the mountain, and then you have the mountain rifle class?
Yep. So the mountain rifleman class goes out to about 1,200, and it primarily works like kind of field firing type work, right? So we spend a lot of time on how winds interact with terrain, angle shooting, and how much it's really not that big of a deal, and just giving guys a process. I mean, that's 90, like we talked about all weekend. Mm-hmm. For you guys that don't know, Chris just came through a skill carbine class I taught down at the ranch this weekend. 90% of what we try to do in the class is give people a process that they can take back to execute on their own. Because I don't care what you can do with me, right? Like, yes, I can guide you to whatever you want to do in your 2 days, right? But the reality is I'm hoping to give you the answer to the question you're looking for when you came to the class, so you can go do it on your own and apply that to whatever it is that your endeavor is. And so a lot of our stuff is developing a process and walking you through the process enough times that you understand it and can start to internalize it and get some of your personal ownership and tweak it to whatever it is that you're doing. And then in a way that's easy for you to go back and replicate until you do achieve mastery of it, right? Because I don't care who you are, you're not getting everything, you're not learning it and making it, you're not a master of it in 2 days. But if you take it and you rep it out enough, next thing you could be a master at it if you put in the deliberate practice and time. But if you just don't know what to practice and you're practicing different things all the time, you're not really, there's a lot of activity, but no real motion, right?
Yeah.
Or progress, if you will. And so we try to make sure that we give you an easily replicable process that you can go back and do on your own. And if you do it enough times, you will gain that mastery. That's how most of our classes are built. So yeah, we got to 1,200 in that. And then, like I said, we've got a 2,000 meter shot that we can do as well.
Nice.
So
that's a long way.
Yeah.
It's a huck. It's a huck for sure. But
what about elevation change? Like, how much do y'all have, like, on that 1,200 yard shot? How much?
So I want to say we're like about 700 feet of elevation change between the bottom of the valley floor and the top of the mountain. We're still in sea level, like, so we are on the White Mountains, but we're not really super high up in like sort of the next atmosphere or anything like that. So we're still at sea level, that first 5,000 feet elevation, MSL. But yeah, I think about 700 vertical feet, 500 to 700. The roads have 500 vertical feet of elevation change from one side of the property to the other. But I think from the valley floor to the top of it's like roughly 700, 750, something like that.
Yeah, the ranch has what, about 2 feet elevation?
Yeah.
It's high angle, bro. You gotta really get that out and get that inclinometer.
I think you got that wrong. They're sunk down. They're below sea level.
They definitely were last week when they had 5 inches of rain. They definitely were floating.
Yeah, in one day.
So this might be just because of like what we sell, what we look at, and kind of like what we're all kind of been talking about, right? So like, you're signed up for a D4 class that you might not get to go to.
Yeah, another scheduling conflict.
Yeah. Then we've got.
Which I'm bummed out about.
Yeah. Justin's going to get to go.
Yeah, Justin,
so that's good for him.
Worked out good for Justin.
But that's a scope carbine. Then we've got Bruiser Industries coming in that we've got him doing a scope class. It just seems like, is there more scope stuff currently on the market than there was, say, 5 to 10 years ago because of, more people are getting into it, or is it because technology's there that, everybody's running LPVOs or low magnification optics? Have you just, or am I just making this up?
No, it's 100%. So like 5 years ago, like I was the only. I think D4 was still doing it too because I think he hybrids, and I haven't been to his class, so I don't want to put words in his mouth and whatever. But I think he hybrids. Like you could run a bolt gun in his class, you can run a gas gun. Like I think I've seen that on his socials, but I could be totally wrong and off base there. But there weren't a lot of us that were like. We started pushing scope carbine, one, because I love the platform, right? Like when I was a sniper, we were also got Mark 12s, Mark 11s, and stuff like that. And I used to carry it, and I just thought like there's so much to this because the ones that we had weren't perfect. And when I got back from my 2010 deployment, I started building what the industry could give me at that time that was like what I thought would be the perfect version of that. And then I saw Mod H, and I was like, oh shit, well, somebody ought to figure this out, right? And so that was kind of my love affair with it, because it was still a carbine, like I could fight with it, but then it could do snipery things if I needed it to, right? And that's what I thought was awesome about the platform and its capability. So I think a couple of things have happened. One, we've been saying this for years. I mean, there's a ton of podcasts that we've been on over the years that we've been like, hey, if you're interested in precision, because precision kind of started to pick up like 2013, 2014 as PRS got popular. And for the first time ever, the industry saw ROI on the precision side of the house. Because for years, I used to ask for stuff, and they'd be like, dude, there's 300 of you. You don't offer the ROI as a community for us to make things for you.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool. Like, I'll go fuck myself. Right? But as that took off, so one, we had the optics revolution, is what I call it, that started like that 13 to, I mean, even now to today, the optics that are coming out, the difference in erectors, things are actually becoming price point. I mean, Vortex kind of jumped out, which made magnified optics available to a lot of people that probably had priced out of or been priced out of before, outside of like a Tasco or a Nikon or something. Yeah. Right. Whatever, and even though some of the lower end Vortexes do have a ton of issues in reliability, it is what it is. They're able to get in the door. But we push scope carbine as that gateway drug. So instead of jumping into a precision rifle for $5,000 and all this other stuff, you could take a carbine you had, buy a $100 Harris bipod, and throw even just an entry level scope on it, feed it good ammo, and all of a sudden you can go and learn the lessons and apply them, and then see if you like it and go from there. I also think that the way that like the training industry has matured, so I think a lot of people get into it with pistol because it's the lowest barrier to entry for cost, right? Unless you're like a Chambers gun or something, but that's usually not your first. Yeah. But then you get into the carbine side because like you're a pistol shooter, like you're a shooter now, so you should have an AR, right? So you get into an AR. And I think there's maybe a certain point where if you are like a go fast guy and you get into USPSA and that sort of stuff and you're doing competition, then yeah, you're always chasing that next level of performance, right? But I think for a lot of people that get into training, they'll do a bunch of classes, they'll go collect a bunch of certs, they'll hit a certain level of skill and ability, and they're like, all right, well, what else do I do? Like, I go to a class and I learn how to do a reload again. Like, you're like, kind of got it, And so what I think about precision shooting as that our group of demographic kind of matures in shooting, precision offers never the same shot twice. I don't care if it's the same range, on the same target, like environmentals are changing, winds changing. Like, so it's a never ending learning process, which I think attracts a lot of people. And so that's what's pulled it to. I also think there's a bit of, I'm totally going to bone out on the word right now, but like probably an opportunistic part of instructors right now where they're like, they see that it's gaining in popularity. Oh yeah. And so every Tom, Dick, and Harry's trying to run, just like when, Jedi started off with red dots and like, not that anybody, not that he was the first dude running red dot on a pistol, but when he started pushing it as a class, all of a sudden everybody's running red dot pistol class. It was like a thing.
You started seeing a lot of those classes getting added.
Right. And you're like, well, what's the difference between that class and a regular pistol class? Well, like nothing, except you learn how to zero the dot, and you learn that you can do the same things with the dot, right? Yeah. And that's not to say you shouldn't take a Jedi class. Like he's got the Game Genie cheat codes on running a red dot, but at the end of the day, like you see a lot of opportunistic instructors are like, oh, red dots are doing really well, like I'll offer a red dot class and try to get some spillover, right? I think a lot of that's happening. So there's guys that have, I'm not saying you need to have a background to be able to teach it, but, I see a lot of guys where I'm like, I'll hear them talk, I'll see them say things on social media, and I'm like, bro, you are so young in your journey that you are just repeating stuff that's been repeated for years, and you don't even know how much you don't know yet. And they're trying to be out there and teach stuff. And so I do see a lot of that right now, and it's those like Joe Dawson, like I talk to him all the time. Mark Smith is another one that I talk to, like, and we just laugh and we're like, bro, you are 5 to 10 years and several thousand rounds, tens of thousands of rounds away from even being able to make up your own thoughts on this, let alone regurgitate what somebody else told you. And so I think that's the big difference between guys that really get it, and from like a professional end user or competition side, and sort of all those guys that are just like, yeah, it's LPVO course. But like, what'd you do? We shot 50 yards in the LPVO. You're like, So yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's definitely seen, a resurgence, or not necessarily a resurgence, but it's
An uptake.
An uptake, yeah. And some of that might be, I don't want to go shoot a 2,000 round carbine class or a 1,500 round carbine class in a weekend. I'd rather put 500 rounds downrange of meaningful. There's only so much you can do standing at 7 yards blasting a target with a Heotech.
That's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I've been doing that for years. Not a ton of classes, but like it's the same. It's kind of the same thing over again. Going back to like 50 yards. Running a carbine course or doing a pistol course. This is kind of like the next
iteration.
Thing. Yeah.
Well, I think it gives guys a lot like a level of understanding, like beyond more, because you just start understanding like ballistics and how things are affecting, and you start to understand, like, especially in the gastros, like we talked about all weekend. The gun's telling you so much when you're able to see it, because you have an optic that's capable of telling you how the gun's behaving, what the gun's doing at such a finite level that you start to learn. And then when you take that and apply it back to other things, all of a sudden you're like, you have this kind of like next level of knowledge of how stuff's happening, right? And so I think there's something to that. I also think SPRs, precision is fun in general, but like SPRs to me, I think they're just fucking fun, dude. Like, so you've got, why do we love ARs? They're fun as shit to shoot. But now I can do that far, fast, from positions. They're just like, it's really hard to walk off one without a smile on your face. And I think that's what why people are getting it, is they're like, dude, I didn't even know. Like, we had guys this weekend, they're like, and I joke, dude, it's 2023 now, right? We've got a recipe that makes this shit easy. And like when you were at the symposium class, we talked about it, right? There's two things I tell every class. I can't wait to show you how hard this isn't. And then the other part is, when it comes to going fast, like, good enough is. And, a lot of these guys will come in and be like, oh man, I've never shot, this gun beyond 100 yards, 50 yards, 200 yards, whatever the limit of the range is. And they're like, we hit at 600. I'm like, yeah, you hit at 600 in so yesterday, the final event we were doing, I call it 3 and 3. So you try to go from standing to prone and fire one shot, 300-yard target. The goal is to be in that 3-second window, right? The reality is most guys, their first time doing it, they're going to be, 4.5 to 11, 16 seconds, whatever the case may be. But it provides a benchmark of being able to take a snapshot. And all of a sudden they see how fast they can go because they've learned how to make it go, and they're like, this is awesome. Now I can push this for speed, right? Like Chris was out, so I think he went shot for shot from standing supported on targets of varying sizes from 0 to 600 yards, like yesterday afternoon, like with a 14.5. Was a hot jumper?
That was a 16
inch.
Yeah.
16-inch hot jumper.
Okay. Gotcha.
And he was like, just, hey, Chris, target 3, bang. Chris, blue 7, bang. It was what it was. And I think there's a ton of fun in that, because like hearing steel hit a distance, like everybody loves that.
Yeah.
But then to do it on something that recoils lightly, that's just fun to shoot in general, that's super familiar, like, it's really hard to do it, not have a good time, and then be like, yeah, I want to go back and do other stuff. It's, and then we do run a short range. So like the part that you didn't get in the 1-day symposium class that we do in the 2-day and the 5-day classes, we do run short range marksmanship packages with it. So you're going to run that SPR like a fighting rifle.
Oh, nice.
Up close, because there is, it's same but different, right? There's just more weight at the end depending on your setup. It might be longer. A lot of guys will throw the offset red dots on their guns, and like we talked about in the last podcast, like either they don't use it or they don't understand, like, okay, like this setup really briefed well, but I didn't understand the height over bore issue that this has up close, right? With my 12 o'clock on certain mount heights and whatever, what have you. And so really what it is, it's not meant to be like a substitute for a close range carbine class. It's meant to just be like, take this, run it through its paces, and see if your setup stacks up where you hoped it did, and then gain that proficiency. So now it's not just your 0 to 600, but you 0 to 100, go to 6. It's, you've done it. You might make some changes, like red dot appreciation for Chris, because he didn't have the offset red dot on his blaster yet.
That hurt a little bit.
So he's like, oh man, yeah, that's a really good idea. I see why you said that. But yeah, just, and it helps guys shake out their kit too, like where they're putting stuff like LURFs, how they're managing their data, so they just kind of become more well-rounded with the system and the platform. And so, yeah, that's, I think, to answer your question, yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. I think the industry has made it way more accessible. the rack grade carbine is so good now.
Yeah.
Like that you really can feed it good ammo and get insane level. I mean, you're talking like factory precision rifle level performance from 10 years ago you can get out of a rack grade AR today. The optics have become more available and more affordable. I think the maturity of shooters, and then to some point, obviously just the fun it is, and then the last part, sort of the con is that opportunistic part of the industry that's trying to seek or jump on people that are, precision curious, as we call it.
So I know from like my perspective, like a lot of dudes that I see, like they'll come into the scope carbine because they can use that more every day than they can like standard rifle use. Because like me or Daryl or somebody from the class, like we'll go out and we'll murder yotes and pigs and
Oh, is
stuff.
Daryl there?
Yeah, Daryl was out
nice.
there. Yeah,
High shooter.
yeah, high shooter, fucking rifle length gas.
Dude, yeah. His setup was chef's kiss. It was nice. So
But like we'll go out and like go to the class, go out hunting now. Like, oh look, the motherfucker's out there at like 850. Haha, he's dead now.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for that, especially for down here, where you guys have wide open. It's like up north we don't have the wide open space like you guys don't have down here. So like hunting in New England is like 35 to 70 yards, right? So it's but yeah, I mean, I just think it's, I don't think it's like, I won't say it's super practical in the like defensive, like CONUS type domestic defense for your average civilian, right? It's pretty hard to justify that. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's a level of understanding. It's fun. On the professional end user side, there's a lot that it offers domestic law enforcement. And like, I'm just going to make sure that everybody hears me now. I'm not saying every cop needs an LPVO equipped gun. In fact, I'm in the opposite camp. I would be a lot more selective on who gets them. But I think that it does offer the right rollout or the right program. It offers a huge leg up and benefit if done correctly. So I think it's just, I don't know, like I said, man, I came back from Afghanistan in 2010. Haven't carried a Mark 12 as one of the guns that I had, Mark 12, Mark 11, M48.5, M107. And I was like, dude, this gun fucks. It was like, I want to change this shit out to how I think it would be best suited, but I love this thing. And that's where the love affair started. And then the industry just kept giving me better and better options. And I'm like, hell yeah. So.
That's cool. That's really cool. You mentioned something, and I'm going to bring this up, and I can go back and edit this out if it's not time to talk about it yet. You're doing a combined class with Mark Smith, right? Are you?
I'm not. I don't think Mark and I have not figured out to do a combined class today. We are. We're sponsoring his competition he's got going on in November down in Texas.
Right. That's the one I'm talking about.
Here in Texas.
Yeah.
I'm like, where am I?
What day is it?
Yeah. Right. So we're when he put that out, I pinged him. I was like, hey, bro, what can we do to help? Because, Mark and I see eye to eye on a lot of stuff with shooting. He comes from a super high performance pistol background, kind of got into the rifle side of stuff. And, we talk a lot. And he's a phenomenal human being. Super approachable guy, super knowledgeable guy. And he's always trying to learn more. And so he and I bounce ideas back and forth. And so as soon as he said he was doing it, I was like, hey, man, how can we help? Right. And so we jumped in to help out with that. Combined class. We do have a combined class coming up with the Bash brothers, me, Dan, and Jared, which is going to be pretty rad up at our place here in September. So it's 3 days, and it's kind of unique and sort of like, instead of like a large event style format where it's like 4 to 8 hour classes that you like cycle through, our format is each day is one of us is the lead, and then the other two of us are AIing for them. And so nice. Each of us kind of take whatever the thing that we decided on to push and kind of at focuses. So like Friday, it'll be Jared as the lead doing pistol work with me and Dan AIing for him. And Saturday, it's Dan doing his urban gunfighter piece with me and Jared AIing for him. And then Sunday, we're going to do, it's kind of like a hybrid, but it's going to be like taking the urban gunfighter stuff because we have the props and the facilities to do it, and then adding it into, that intermediate distance. So by the end of the 3 days, it's, probably 0 to 400 level capability. And what I've been telling students that are signed up is I'm like, don't come with guns like golf clubs. Like, pick the one rifle, maybe bring a spare or whatever, but pick the one rifle that you're like, this is my go-to. Yeah. Shoot the whole 3 days with it, the same pistol the whole 3 days, whatever. So you're like, you can see what that thing can do weapon optic ammo combination, out to that intermediate distance and have fun with it. And then obviously, there'll be festivities in the evenings.
Libations?
Yeah, libations. Trying to work that Miller Lite sponsorship right now. But, so that one's going to be pretty fun. I mean, me and Joe Dawson from Bruiser, we've talked about trying to do a combo class as well at some point. But, right now it's just a matter of scheduling. Like
There's the 2024 class.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're working on that one. Another one with that, too, yeah. But, yeah, I talked to Mark. I mean, I literally texted Mark this morning. He was texting me back and forth. But we're on board for sponsorship for the November class, and we will be sending people up there.
I'm sorry, that's right, because the way that November deal is going down is he's running a class, and then the final day of the class is a competition that's opened up not only to the members of the class, but also to anybody else that wants to shoot the comp. So,
nice.
Apologies, that's why
You're good.
I was thinking of the final day. I forgot about the first two.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of how that one's going to break
Really
down.
interesting.
I think it's going to be fun. Well, yeah, he was telling me he got the idea from another guy who does it on sort of like the pistol side. And he was like, well, hey, I want to kind of replicate this for this rifle class. And I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like a really good idea that he's going to be able to do with that. And I've done a class before, way back in the day when I was still in, to where it was a 2-day class, and on the second day at the same facilities there was a USPSA match. And so you would run the day prior, you would run class with the instructor, and then day 2 you shot the match in the instructor's squad, and he had nothing to do with the match.
Right.
So you weren't like pre-shooting all the stages.
No, but your instructor got to help you stage plan, diagnose,
right,
after action it real time.
And then after that, after the match, you would go back through and do walkthroughs of every stage and be like, okay, this is why I moved from point A to C instead of from point A to B to C, right? And so that was really cool. And me and Mark talked about that and being able to take that class with rifle and pistol and do it from that with his experience and his level of instruction. It's going to be a phenomenal
I think it's going to be cool too, because Mark comes with a ton of match experience too. I think to be then a match director for that day, whether he's calling himself that or not, like, sorry bro, that's what he's going to be, right? Yeah. But he's probably been on the receiving end of a bunch of good matches, probably been on the receiving end of a bunch of bad matches, and so he's going to get to put together a match that I think is going to be super fun. It's challenging, but obviously achievable, but in a way where it will backstop a lot of the lessons learned in the class. I think it's going to be cool. So we'll be here for sure, hanging out, having a good time, cutting up, hopefully shooting, maybe if I'm lucky enough. But yeah. So. And
we'll drop links down below in the description on the website and everything to your website, the classes that you've talked about. This match, I don't know if it's up yet for Mark Smith, but the Brokos and Reston class is up on your website currently.
Yeah. I think it's like coming up on like 75-80% filled already. Oh, wow. So it's it's gonna be a good time. People like kind of jumped into it, right away. Like y'all know Jordan. So like I think I hit posts and it was like before the first like came on Instagram, it was like sale Jordan. So I was like, apparently he was waiting for that. So I think he was the first man in. So he's student serial number 1. But yeah, that's gonna be a fun time. I'm looking forward to that one. It's gonna be perfect time in New England too, like mid-September, like. Not too cold, not too hot.
So. Might have to go in there and
not
break out
64.
Not that negative 64. Yesterday or Saturday was negative 108 at Mount Washington. I'm really glad I was down here.
I think I'm gonna go break out the company credit card here in a minute.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of thinking the same thing.
If you guys need to send a representative, I'm down.
Like,
for sure.
He's got to shoot in just a cape, like looks like a banner. Just says big text on it the whole time.
I will do that with my Lorax patch.
So we're that's we're working. That's in the works currently. That's already been sent off for art.
Nice.
The art department.
It's got international appeal. It translates really nicely.
Dude, so where can people find you?
So the website's probably the best place. RidgelineShooting.com. It's got all of their calendars, classes, class descriptions, everything you need to get on there. On the gram, it's like Ridgeline Defense. If you just Google Ridgeline, it's like us and the car. So like you'll figure it out. And then Facebook, if anybody even goes on that anymore. I think Ridgeline Training Center. Same on YouTube, Ridgeline. But like I said, you Google Ridgeline and anything related to firearms, there's like one shitty Chinese Target company, like the Honda car and us. So you'll find it.
Nice.
That's fantastic. We appreciate you coming up.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Once again.
Down in Texas. I think we're gonna be in Texas like 5 or 6 times this year, so we're moving in.
Keep us on your schedule, man. We're here
For sure.
so come by. We enjoyed it.
But yeah, thank y'all for watching. Go check out all this stuff and like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We really appreciate all the support and y'all checking in every week and listening to us. But I guess we will see y'all next time.
Thanks.